of the Stroke Summer School 2021. We have interesting case presentations by students. Now I call upon for the first case, I call upon Dr. Thomas Ipe. Dr. Thomas Ipe, sir, is the head of the Department of Neurology from Medical College of Trivandrum. His areas of interest are stroke and infectious diseases. And I also call upon Dr. Sanjeet Aran. He is a professor of neurology from CMC Vellore. His areas of interest are acute stroke therapies, stroke in young, CVT, and headache disorders. I would like to request you to chair the session, sir. Thank you.
Thomas, sir, you can.
Yeah. Good afternoon. First of all, let me thank the organizers, and Dr. Padma, Dr. Rohit, Dr. Jayaraj for giving us an opportunity to share this. I think we can go straight. Sanjit?
Yes, I think
yes, sir.
Start the case.
So we can go straight to the presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. Respected faculty members, thanks for giving this opportunity. Today I am presenting a case. A 61-year-old right-handed gentleman, farmer by occupation, a resident of Jaisalmer, Rajasthan, was brought to emergency room at 5:35 a.m. On 24th of June 2021 after 9th day of onset with a history of sudden onset right-sided hemiparesis with motor aphasia, which progressed to right-sided hemiplegia with global aphasia over 30 minutes since 12:05 a.m. on 16th of June 2021, followed by there was clinical worsening in the form of vomiting and altered sensorium for last 1 day. There was no history of headache, vomiting, altered sensorium, convulsion over 8 days of onset of symptom. But on 23rd of June at 7 a.m., he started having multiple episodes of vomiting followed by altered sensorium. There was no antecedent history of fever, cough, dyspnea on exertion or at rest. No antecedent history of chest pain, uncomfortable awareness of the heartbeat. No recent history of trauma. There was no recent history of significant weight loss, intermittent claudication, discoloration of the digits or loss of digits. No past history suggestive of TIA, stroke or CAD or undergone any cardiac surgery. No past history of recurrent unexplained headache, dizziness, sudden visual obscuration or curtain-like sensation. No past history suggestive of recurrent chest infection, upper respiratory tract infection, polyarthralgia, recurrent oral ulceration, skin rashes, epistaxis and hemoptysis. Family history was unremarkable for the sudden cardiac death, connective tissue disorder, malignancy or hematological disorder, and tuberculosis. The risk factor, there was no, he was not a known case of hypertension, diabetes mellitus, CAD. He was non-smoker, non-alcoholic, not a known case of opium addict. No history of drug intake like chemotherapy or herbal medicine. No recent history of clinically evident COVID-19 infection. He received first dose of Covishield vaccine 4 months back. Patient was admitted in a private hospital after 12 hours of the ictus, where MRI brain and MR angiography of the head and neck was done, which revealed this is the MRI brain DWI sequence suggestive of patchy area of diffusion restriction in the left MCA territory with the corresponding changes in the ADC map. This is the T1 and T2 weighted image axial section, which is suggestive of the chronic infarct with the volume loss and gliotic changes. In the right side, we can see the flare sequence in a coronal section. We can see the gliotic changes with the volume loss. This is the MR angiography suggestive of left MCA territory occlusion, M1 occlusion, and MR neck was angiography of the neck was normal. Aspirin 75 milligram and atorvastatin 40 milligram was started, and patient was admitted for the conservative management in a private hospital. Routine hematological parameter revealed polycythemia, hemoglobin was 20 gram per deciliter and hematocrit was 62.3%. Peripheral smear was suggestive of normocytic normochromic with anisocytosis. Bone marrow aspiration was in favor of myeloproliferative neoplasm.
Sanjeev, can we discuss your thought process till now?
Sir, as he is elderly patient, but there was no history of risk factor or any comorbidities. Though the CBC was suggestive of polycythemia, and the bone marrow biopsy was suggestive of myeloproliferative neoplasm. We should also think about the other myeloproliferative neoplasm related hypercoagulable state.
So the question is, the patient has come 6 days after the initial event with deterioration in his even GCS. So what all passes through your mind? What all can
It could
possibly
be,
be?
yes, sir. The clinical deterioration in the form of vomiting and altered sensorium is more in favor of the hemorrhagic transformation.
No, we don't know. Okay. What all can you consider? You haven't seen the scan yet. What is END? END. What is END in stroke? Acute stroke or the initial few days of stroke. And this early neurological deterioration. So what are the causes?
First is hemorrhagic transformation. Second is the raised ICT because of the edema. Third is the re-stroke.
What else? What is the commonest thing you see in the ward? Patient deteriorating.
Aspiration, sir.
Okay, infections. Then what else? In this particular patient, what else will you consider? You can have a host of causes, including electrolyte imbalance, even seizures.
Yes, sir. Hyponatremia has to be ruled out.
Okay. Anything particular in this particular patient in the background of myeloproliferative disorder, which you are thinking of?
As such,
Can also can be at risk for pulmonary embolism or even CVT. Both can occur in the setting. Okay. I think Dr. Thomas, right?
Yeah, initially when he came, not after the 6 days, initially when he came and the imaging, can you go back to the imaging?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What does this suggest?
This suggests the patchy area of diffusion restriction. It's not the whole MCA territory is involved. Probably the collaterals are good. That could be the reason.
I think it could be collaterals are good. Any other alternate possibility? Can it be cardioembolic?
It can be, sir, but other territories are not involved, sir, apart from the left MCA territory.
So maybe internal carotid artery disease or proximal MCA disease with embolism from that.
It could be possible, sir.
And then the next slide.
Yes, sir.
What does this suggest? This slide suggest?
Yes, sir. This is the T1 weighted image, the first one, which is suggestive of the low signal, and the lower side we can see the T2 weighted image, which is suggestive of high signal in the left MC territory, and the flare sequence is also suggestive of the hyperintensity in the left MC territory with the volume loss and the glyoptic changes, and the ventricles are enlarged probably because of the volume loss.
So that would suggest what?
The same territory was previously also involved, but he was not symptomatic for that.
So that means it is not a recent, long-standing disease was there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can we not conclude that way? There was a long-standing disease in the same territory. And now an acute insult has occurred. Okay, next slide.
MR angiography of the neck is absolutely normal, and in the intracranial vessel we can see the left MCA territory M1 occlusion is there, but the feeling is present in the distal vessels.
Okay.
One comment here is it's a MR, it's a top time of flight imaging, right?
Yes, sir.
So usually top can overcall things. So if you see something like this, it's better to be more careful, and because you're seeing.
Actually, this imaging was done outside, and only the film was available, and this is the scanned film of film. It's not the imaging from our institute, sir.
That's fine. But whenever you have a doubt like that, do you think it is completely, totally occluded, or there may be some flow? We don't know. So it's always better to go in and get more definite images. Maybe we can go in for a CT angio to see what is happening exactly there. So that could have been the thing to be done, could have been done.
Yes, sir, it was done, sir.
Yeah, you can
in the-
continue. Yeah.
Yes.
Can
Bone marrow-
that,
Yes, sir.
whatever we are seeing, could it be something like a low flow strokes which is happening? Because it's not totally occluded. He has a chronic infarct. On top of that, he's
Yes, sir.
getting another
It could be
infarct.
possible, sir. That's why the CT angio was repeated even after the worsening.
Sure.
Yes.
What is the peak timing of hemorrhagic transformation after an acute infarct?
Usually, within the first week is the highest chances, and in this condition, patient having worsening after 9th day. Sir.
Okay, so and then there is a problem there regarding hemorrhagic transformation. Plus, what about the size of the infarct?
In between the CT from our institute and MR from other private hospital, in between there was no imaging available, sir.
But the available infarct, was it a large infarct or a small infarct or intermediate?
It was patchy area of infarct with the old infarct was also there. Sir.
Okay.
The bone marrow biopsy was done, which revealed hypercellular marrow with pleomorphic megakaryocyte, and that was all. The interpretation was given as myeloproliferative neoplasm. Hydroxyurea was started, and one therapeutic phlebotomy was done, and then patient was discharged after 3 days of admission. On 23rd of June 2021, he started having multiple episodes of vomiting, followed by altered sensorium since 7 a.m. without any convulsion or loss of consciousness. Patient was brought to the emergency room, AIIMS Jodhpur, where GCS was E3, V global aphasia, M5, NIHS was 15, MRS was 5. On examination, pupil was 2.5 millimeter bilateral reactive, direct and consensual. No gauge preference was there. Right side power was 0/5. Right plantar was extensor. Left side spontaneous movement was there. And BP was 166/90 mm of Hg. Heart rate was 76 per minute. Sinus in rhythm. Oxygen saturation was 97 without requirement of the oxygen. NCCT head was done in the emergency department, and which revealed left gangliocapsular bleed, large size gangliocapsular bleed with intraventricular extension. We can see in the third image, it's clear that the sulcal spaces are not visible because of the hyperdense area seen in the posterior aspect. That was suggestive of SAH also. And CT angiography of the head and neck was done, which was suggestive of left MCA territory, M1 MCA occlusion with the presence of distal flow also present. And I can go through the next slide. I can show you this is the cavernous part of the ICA. Actually, the outside report, they have mentioned there is a eccentric plaque in the small eccentric plaque in the left ICA cavernous part. But in our institute, once the CT angio was done, there was no plaque in the left ICA. That's why I put this slide. So the CT angiography of the neck was completely normal. ICA was completely normal. There was cutoff in the M1 MCA territory. Rapid kit test for COVID came negative. Then patient was shifted to neuro ICU. Antiplatelet was stopped. Mannitol was started, and regular monitoring of the GCS and pupil was done. Initial COVID PCR came negative. Electrocardiography and 2D echo were revealed normal study. Patient was intubated in view of aspiration pneumonia and kept on a spontaneous mode of ventilation. Here we can see the chest X-ray revealed right lower zone consolidation with the intact cardiac celerity, and in the right side HRCT thorax was done along with the CT head that was suggestive of aspiration pneumonia. Then antibiotic was started in view of aspiration pneumonia as per the bronchial culture, which was positive for the Klebsiella and sensitive to cholesterol, minocycline and tigecycline. After 4th day of admission, he continued to have fever and all cultures came negative. And then COVID PCR was repeated, which came positive on 3rd of July 2021. Then patient was shifted to COVID ICU. This is the trend of CBC, complete hemogram, from the day of admission to the up to discharge, and in between there was like 4 therapeutic phlebotomy was done, and we can see he was admitted on 24th of June in our institute, and the hemoglobin was 19.4 and hematocrit was 58.8. And at the time of discharge, the hemoglobin was 12.2 and hematocrit was 38.3. I also want to mention about the platelet count and WBC count, which is also important. If a patient having hyperviscosity like state and the WBC count is higher side, the chances of thrombosis will be more. And if the platelet count is more than 3.5 lakhs, the chances of thrombosis will be more, as per the literature. In the lower side, we can see the inflammatory marker for the COVID was high, and the D dimer was 3.43 microgram per ml, and CRP was 80.5, and ferritin was 394 nanogram per ml. HbA1c was 5.4. Serum cholesterol was absolutely normal, and LDL was 58. INR was 1.46, slightly higher side, and APTT was 31.7 second. All the viral markers were negative, and homocysteine was 14.2 micromole per liter. During evaluation, the serum EPO was done, that was 12.7 milli international unit per ml. JAK2 mutation was detected, and the diagnosis of acute ischemic stroke with the involving left MC territory, followed by left gangliocapsular bleed due to the polycythemia vera was made, and aspiration, along with the aspiration pneumonia and COVID-19 infection. Though there was no worsening of the pulmonary symptom was noted due to the COVID. Mannitol was started, and hydroxyurea was continued. Therapeutic phlebotomy was done, 1 from outside and 4 from our side, and the antibiotic was given as per the culture sensitivity. We considered low molecular weight heparin even with the large size hematoma because of the DVT prophylaxis and raised D dimer from the 5th day of ICH, and we monitored for the clinical worsening, and IV fluid was given for the volume expansion. Other supportive treatment was given, and tracheostomy was done. During discharge, the vitals was normal. GCS was E3VT M5, MRS was 5, NIHS was 15, Barthel was 0, and patient was discharged on RT feed and Foley's catheter. Yesterday, patient came for the follow-up. MRS was 5, and GCS was E4VT M6. So the simple comprehension was improved, but the complex comprehension was not present.
So what do you think is the cause of intracerebral bleed?
Sir, there are few literature that suggested that even a bleed is also frequent in cases of polycythemia vera. It might not be related with the only 75 milligram of aspirin. They put the theory hypothesis that the increase in von Willebrand factor will bind to the abnormal platelet will further cause the bleed. This is the hypothesis, proposed hypothesis given by the given in the literature, but exact mechanism is still not clear.
Not the high von Willebrand, the low. Up to 10% of patients with polycythemia associated with the high platelet count, they can have a low von Willebrand factor, and these are the patients who can go on to bleed.
Yes, sir.
So there are some recommendations where in anybody with polycythemia and stroke, you have to check von Willebrand factor before you start antiplatelet, because those are the high risk for bleed.
This is the risk factor for the bleed in a risk factor for the thrombotic event in a polycythemia vera. Like low risk patient, if the patient having age of 60 and no previous history of thrombosis, they are considered as low risk group. And if the patient having age of more than 60 or patient having previous thrombotic event are considered as high group and high risk group. And proposed risk factor for the thrombosis is hypertension, smoking, leukocytosis, high platelet count, low RDW, and lymphocyte percentage less than 17% is also increasing the risk of thrombosis. And this is the complication related with the polycythemia vera. Here we can see the microvascular complication like erythromelalgia, headache, dizziness, visual disturbances, paresthesia, and TIA. These all symptoms will usually improve with the therapeutic phlebotomy. But if the patient does not respond to the therapeutic phlebotomy, then we should consider for, even in a low risk group, we should consider for the increase in the aspirin dose. This is the current recommendation for the treatment of polycythemia vera. The serial therapeutic phlebotomy should be done, and her target hematocrit should be less than 45. And we should start low dose of aspirin 81 to 100 milligram. And if the patient is having low risk and the inadequate control of the microvascular symptoms, or patient having hypertension, or if the patient having leukocytosis, then aspirin BD dose should be considered. And if the patient having high risk and history of thrombosis is present, and then we should add hydroxyurea 500 milligram BD. And if the patient having arterial thrombus, we can continue the aspirin as a BD dose. If the patient having venous thrombosis, we can add the low molecular weight heparin or NOAC. And if the patient is intolerant to the hydroxyurea or resistant, actually the hydroxyurea, almost 75% to 80% of the patient respond well with the hydroxyurea. But from the beginning of hydroxyurea, almost 10 to 12% of the patient will not tolerate the hydroxyurea. But over the time of even the patient is tolerating hydroxyurea, the over 5 years he will develop resistance. In that condition, we can start the consider for the pegylated interferon and busulfan. This is the recommendation, sir. And these are the new drugs which is available.
So I have a doubt. The massive intracellular bleed has occurred on the same side as
Yes,
a patient with long-standing MCA narrowing or occlusion. It has occurred on the same side. And probably, I think multiple factors would have worked. Not only polycythemia vera. Polycythemia vera was there, but high blood pressure was high.
no, sir. Actually, this was reactionary high BP. In between, the family member monitored the BP, and the BP was normal just before landing to the hospital.
Then was there any neovascularization in that area? It has occurred on the same side as long-standing occlusion.
Yes, sir. This was the query. Actually, I'll show you this literature came, the patient having recurrent right MCA territory infarct in a case of JAK2 mutation related positive polycythemia vera. And
No,
what
that is
they
true. Literature
reported,
is there. My point is literature is there, but we have to keep an open mind and see whether other reasons are there. So the literature is there, then that I understand, but we should look in a different way also. That is my point.
Dr. Sanjeev, Dr. Thomas, can I just ask one query?
Yeah, sure.
Sanjeev, did you show his gradient or an SWI image by any chance? Do you think that the old slit that you showed could have been an old bleed slit, because that was very linear and subcortical rather than an infarct? You have any SWI or a gradient image for that patient?
no, sir. No, sir. Only CT was done from our side because of the bleed, and outside image also SWI was not done, sir.
Can you go back to your MR? Can you just show the first MRI quickly?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, there is an infarct, of course, which is acute. There is one old T2 scan. No? You're showing a T2 scan as well. Next slide. Yeah, so I don't know whether this kind of chordates, the subcortical lentiform, the striatum was also an infarct, and this one was an old bleed, which was there in him because he's bled on the same side. So maybe that could be a concern as well. So that's fine if you don't have. Please carry on. Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
Yeah.
So Dr. Sanjay, what is your basic take-home message from this case?
It's quite difficult to manage a large ICH patient in a hypercoagulable state, like if the patient having polycythemia along with the COVID with the increase in D dimer.
I think
So
the
difficult.
first point you should, I think, should be for all the residents. Whenever a patient comes with acute stroke, especially elderly, without any risk factors, make sure you take a close look at the hematocrit and other cell lines. Often now we think it is some dehydration and we just forget about it. We might not even recheck it. So I think anybody above 60, make sure you keep a close watch on that. And also, did you check for spleen in this patient? Splenomegaly.
No, sir, splenomegaly was not. Actually, patient was shifted to COVID ICU and ultrasound was not done. Sir.
Okay. I think that's one thing which I think all the residents should keep in mind whenever we see an elderly patient with stroke. Dr. Thomas, you can take over.
Yeah, I think time is up. A very good case, multiple factors, polycythemia, COVID, hemorrhage, infarct. I think it's a therapeutic challenge. He has presented well and brought out many aspects of the management, the complexity of management of ischemic stroke and hemorrhagic stroke. Any other comments?
Anybody, any other comments from any panelists?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think there's an echo here. In the panel, your first platelet count was pretty low, 1.72, and then it rose to 7 point something.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain that? 1.52 was on 17th, and then after a week it was 7.49, and then it rose.
That can be explained if the peripheral smear was available. Actually, sometimes because of hemodilution, we can get the low platelet.
Or you think this is some fallacious report? This was not your report, right?
Yes, ma'am. This was not our report.
May I say something about the 1.52? There could have been clumping of platelets when you have this thing, and it can give you a fallaciously low level. That also should be kept in mind. And it could be the underlying the COVID morphology, COVID changes, which could have contributed to the bleed thereafter.
He's raised his hand also.
I think I would agree with you, sir. I think COVID had a role here because it's very tough to explain, as Professor I was, constantly pointing out, that kind of a bleed with everything going in favor of something to clot. So probably something with your COVID, the D dimer, those issues may have contributed.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
The last question, since you're...
So just about polycythemia, and you told us about the hematocrit cutoffs that we need to maintain in these patients. What if there is a risk of a ischemic stroke? Is there an indication for antiplatelets in such a patient? Would you give antiplatelets? If yes, when? Or is it a general rule later on? I know this is a hemorrhage, but polycythemia usually also presents with hypercoagulable strokes or low flow due to the hypercoagulable state. Not coagulable, but reduced flow.
Yes, sir. Literature suggested that you can start even in after 2 weeks. We can consider for the low dose of the antiplatelet agent.
All patients?
Sir, if the patient having known case of a stroke.
Sanjay, you can show that flow chart which he had showed
Yes,
us.
sir. Yes, sir.
That will help clarify the doubt.
Yeah, so this...
So all the patient, even the patient belongs to the low risk or high risk, they should receive low dose of aspirin because the bleeding risk is very low. That's
okay. But my understanding was only the high risk receives the aspirin. The low risks who not had thrombosis should be avoided. That's as per some recent guidelines, which for a recent patient I checked out. And we were in the same dilemma to give antiplatelets or not. Only the high risk patients, especially the elderly, like you've mentioned here, right? Only the elderly who had some events in the past. That's a usual recommendation. I don't know if this is a more recent one or the one which I read. But low risk may just be given, phlebotomies and keep the HCT down below the cutoff.
This flowchart shows aspirin twice daily.
Yep, but that's, I
If
know
the
it's
patient
given,
if the patient having hypertension and if the patient having presence of leukocytosis or patient the microvascular symptoms were not improved with the only low dose of aspirin and serial phlebotomy, then we can consider for the BD dose.
then I agree. Okay, yeah, not as a standard recommendation.
Yes, sir.
So, sir, can we move to the next case with your permission, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, moderators. With that, we'd like to move on